everyone. It's Ashley and Nick with another episode of Debt Collection 101. And we have a very familiar face on again. We have the president of insideARM, Amy Perkins. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Think this is, your third time now?
Yes, yeah.
Becoming a regular.
Yeah.
I like it.
Today, we're going to be talking about what soft skills are needed to successfully work from home, especially during this time. So firstly, you've been working from home since before the nearly nationwide transition. So can you share how current events have changed your situation in the last month, if at all?
Yeah, for sure. So I've worked from home for 8 years, I think total, on and off throughout the years. So this hasn't been a huge change for me. But I will say because our whole company hasn't been virtual, I've been one of few within our company, and this has driven everyone to be virtual. It's definitely made us reevaluate our communication strategies amongst one another. But then also as a leader of these folks within the organization, really checking in on their mental health, even more than I regularly would, to say, hey, how are you feeling? Are you doing okay? Especially like my more social colleagues, who are probably feeling some serious withdrawal, or even some of my more introverted colleagues just feeling like they don't even have the noise or the access to other people around. It's definitely impacted everyone, I think, in a different way. But I would say I guess the work from home piece of it, though, for me personally, hasn't been as much of an effect on me as it has been really just changing up my leadership style for those newer employees who are now working from home. And I will say I'm out of my pajamas more than I used to be, because now everybody being remote means we're all on video a lot more. So one of those perks of being able to get ready when I wanted to has kind of gone away, I feel like, more than it ever did before. And then personally, I think a lot of us, we talked about this briefly before the call, are also balancing if you have children, balancing those children being at home and helping them with school while also balancing work, which adds a whole new dynamic and certainly has had me reevaluate my work routines to be able to try to balance all of that.
Yeah, I found that, working from home, and it sounds good in and of itself until you actually start to do it, and that's like a whole different animal once you actually start sitting down and you're doing a couple of weeks working from home.
Yeah. Well, I will say I do thrive on other people's energy as much as I
do too.
I do like being around people. And so one thing that used to sort of be my sanity was say if I had an hour break between meetings or whatever, I could run to the gym, get a boost of people's energy, do my thing, and then come back. And now it's like all those options for recharging myself aren't there. So yeah, that's kind of worked my it's really hit me a little in the motivation area, just because I have to sort of power through more than I would have before when I had those outlets or releases where I could refill my cup to keep doing my thing.
Yeah, I feel that.
Now, what do you think is or are the most challenging adjustments for any employee who is newly remote?
I think without question, it's focus and self-motivation. You really just can't depend on others to help fill some of those areas, kind of like we were talking about before, to drive you. And it really depends on what level you're at in a company and what your role is. I think, and for a lot of people, even if they work from the office, they've had a lot of autonomy to be able to pace themselves through their work. They have their goals. As long as, they're progressing and doing their goals, they're fine. For those colleagues who are now working from home, who are hooked to a headset all day, interacting with customers, and being at home, I think that's a whole different level of focus and adjustment that has to be there to remain available for the next customer to come, and not sitting in wrap time when your manager's not 6 feet away, making sure that you're doing that. You really have to be self-guided and self-disciplined to be able to get those things done. And we've put a lot of things in place, and I'll talk about them a little bit later, for us internally, to really be able to make sure that we're helping one another with that. Because even for me, I'm the president of the company, but I need help staying focused just as much as anybody else. It's a human trait. It's not a role, trait. certainly I've built self-discipline and those things through the years, but anyone out there who's feeling like, gosh, I must be lazy because I'm working from home now and I just want to sit on my couch. You are not alone. That's just the temptation of being at home. And until you get into a routine and get a new system set up, it's easy to feel like focus is work and that self-discipline is work. So I think that's probably I know that's probably the basic common sense answer, but it really is the most challenging piece. And then also figuring out where you find your joy in your work or in your life in general, and figuring out how to keep infusing that and not letting that go, so that you don't just become, just a robot trying to get through all the different phases. You have to remember that you need to take those times to also take those breaks, those mental breaks, and say, I got to walk away from this for an hour and come back. That's okay. It just takes a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. For Nick, actually, he takes a little break and goes and walks his dog. So just to
we've been
even get
going
out of the
miles.
house. Yeah. But I feel the whole couch thing that you said. I actually had to go to our office and get a desk to bring home. So I had something to sit at that's just more motivating than sitting on my couch in front of my TV all day long.
Yeah, when I first started working from home, I didn't have a designated space either. And I thought that was okay. I think I sat at my kitchen table for a really long time. But it never felt official. And my couch was right there. And with phones nowadays too, sometimes I'll be like, I just want to sit down here and scroll, scroll. All those things are so tempting. I have to, with my phone, I have to keep it away, from my desk area when I'm working, because a notification pops up and that kind of thing becomes distracting. And then I've noticed I've wasted 15 or 20 minutes in my phone doing absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
And I know we've all done that, and nobody wants to admit it in a work setting or working from home setting, but let's face it, we all have that temptation all the time. So that's another thing I've had to do, is get that away, so I don't say, hey, let me just take the phone and go sit down for a minute, and then an hour later I've done absolutely nothing. So that's all part of the process.
Right. All right. So in general, what soft skills are most important for remote work?
Yeah, when we started talking about that we were going to tackle soft skills here, it's really a struggle, because I think companies first need to hire for soft skills before they even start looking at all the more technical skills people have, because soft skills are so hard to teach. So, when we talk about what's important here in a minute, we'll talk about how to work on some of those things. I was really challenged with, gosh, someone has to really be willing to learn and acknowledge that they have a gap in a particular soft skill to even start the journey to figuring out how to help them through that. But the ones I would say are most important right now, work ethic, obviously you can't quantify that, but I think it's one that's very important. Self-discipline, independence, all the things that sort of are wrapped under work ethic. Listening skills, for me with my team, really more than ever, not listening to respond, but really listening and hearing what they're saying, so that I can do that check-in on not only the work, but them as people, and making sure they're okay and that they're handling, the amount of work that's coming our way, which is for many of us more work than ever, at a time when we're more challenged than ever to stay focused, because there's everything seems a little more insignificant when you're in the face of a pandemic and this thing that's taking lives. It's oh gosh, is this thing that's a priority really meaningful? I mean, I think we've all been challenged with that. So I think listening helps you learn when people might be straying or not, being able to focus, but also how you can solve their problem. And I'd say that kind of parlays into strong communication as another soft skill that people need to have right now, for a few reasons. One, it's easy to sort of fade into the background when you work from home, because you're not right there with your boss. You're not right there with the other people that you're typically influencing. And so you have to be strategic in your communication to make sure that you're still getting the same exposure professionally that you would get in the office. But also just being able to communicate in new ways on video, on conference calls. There are some people who are on conference calls that weren't on conference calls before, because they could always just go into the meeting room with their boss. So I think communication is changing, and I think people have to really work on that to really help make sure that all the lines of communication stay open to keep everyone moving on the same path down the same lane. Time management, adaptability. Adaptability is a soft skill that I value very highly in anyone that I'm looking to hire, especially because of times like this when you're saying, hey, our whole world's getting turned upside down. We're just going to have to roll up our sleeves and figure out what that looks like and how to remain viable as a company, or whatever your company's challenges or the challenges for your job. I think if people are adaptable, then they can usually rise to any occasion. And I think that's important in employees. And then finally, emotional intelligence. I think especially for leaders right now, being able to, I say this over and over, you guys probably get sick of it, but acknowledging that first we are people, and then we are people getting a job done. And I think those people who have emotional intelligence and can know when to show people grace and know when to push harder and drive them harder to get better results at a time like this, more than ever, when people are at their breaking point, I think that's very, very important to know how to handle people in the appropriate way.
Yeah, I agree. Now, with everybody in this new environment, and what are some actionable ways employees can work to build those soft skills you just mentioned?
Okay. Well, it's hard. I would say the plan is different for every one of those soft skills. So I'll just tackle sort of the work ethic, self-discipline one, as the actionable recommendations I can give. And the number one thing I would say, and I think this applies no matter what level you're at within an organization, we all have goals. We all have work that the sum of that work will help us achieve those goals. And I think now more than ever, even if you don't have a boss or a manager or a leader who requires this, but I think each of us should sit down and look at our quarterly goals, the things that at the end of this quarter, at the end of the next few months, we want to make sure we have accomplished, and really list out those big activities that need to get done between now and then for those goals to be achieved, and really spell it out more than ever, and put that in front of your boss proactively and say, I need your help helping me stay accountable to these more than ever, because all of us are challenged with this focus thing that we just talked about. And then setting up routines. Like for us here at insideARM, what we've done is normally we have a Monday weekly goal meeting where we talk about all of our progress against each of our quarterly, we call them rocks. And so we have to report out and talk about how we're doing, and then overcome issues together that each of us may be having to achieve our rocks. Now we've moved that to daily. So every single day we have one document that says, these are the things in the next 24 hours that I'm going to do, which sounds very micromanaging, but it's really because we all recognize we need that level of accountability right now, because we're just getting pulled in so many directions. So again, back to the work ethic, I would say really being disciplined and laying those things out and seeking accountability to those things is more important now than it ever was. And I think being honest with someone at work about what your potential pitfalls are, working from home or dealing with a crisis, if you're someone who gets really, really anxious about things like this, a pandemic, who isn't, but just having a friend or a coworker that you say, gosh, these are some of my tendencies in this type of situation. Can you look out for those in meetings or in my work, or if you see me fading off, can you hold me accountable and sort of be my accountability coach to not let myself fall into some of those areas? I think that's really important if you have someone that you can count on like that to help keep you focused. But again, it's an actionable thing that you can do to help deal with this soft skill that may be lacking or that needs help.
Nice. Good. Those are very helpful for us too. I mean, me and Nick, we talk to each other every day, so.
And we do that too. We're really good at it. But I will say this daily thing has been great, because you can see something on your list that you say, why am I doing that thing? Because it's not a thing that advances one of my goals, and it just highlights our ability to very quickly get down a rabbit hole and go down a completely different area. And this has allowed us to really maximize our time and make sure the time that we do have, at home working, that it's on those things that are most important, which has been great, because that allows for other time when you need to step away and help your kid with homework or other things, staying on track with the most important topics.
Right. Yeah. So we kind of touched on this throughout the whole interview so far, but obviously many employees are experiencing those situational stresses on top of this extreme change of routine. And you kind of gave some advice already, but if there is anything else, what advice can you give to those employees who may be struggling just to stay focused on work due to the current events?
Yeah, sure. A few things I would say. One is show yourself grace. I think we all need to do that right now. If you have a day that was just a total bust, that's going to happen. Um, that we're dealing with a lot right now. And so I think, I've had employees come to me beating themselves up, and I'm like, hold on, like, we're dealing with something unlike anyone has dealt with in a really long time, in most of our lifetimes. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to fall apart. It's okay to be a little more emotional than you might have been otherwise. Like, I think as leaders, we need to encourage that, but I also and create a culture that lets people know that, hey, we recognize sometimes we're going to be human, and that's going to pour into our work. So that's one. I'd say the other is, I mentioned this earlier, carving out time in the day to refill your cup. I mentioned, for me, fitness is really important. I can't go to the gym and see my friends and get that done, but I still have been doing something, moving, running up and down my road like a crazy person, back and forth, and back and forth. We're doing online Zoom classes. Everybody has their own thing. Make sure that you force yourself to do some of those things, and don't just sit in front of the computer or your phone, all the time. And then focus on what you can control, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. I can't change the fact that I'm balancing, being a stay-at-home mom and a work-from-home mom. But I can try to make the best of that situation. And I think I can control that. I can't control the virus. I can control how I behave, as a result of that. And so for us, even here at home, my daughter, who gets a little anxious about things and all this change is coming her way, I've sat down and said, let's make the list of things you can control, the list of things that you are just totally within your scope of management. And she does that, and it makes her feel like, oh, I am in control of this situation, at least the things I can. So that helps.
That's awesome.
Now, this is a little thing, but let yourself unwind after work before jumping right into home things, because that was one thing I learned pretty early on when I started working from home. Is I would walk downstairs and I would start cooking dinner, get the clothes out, or doing the dishwashing thing. And then I would sit down at 10 for the very first time and be like, oh, wow, this has been one big long day. We're now at the end of my work day, and my daughter knows this too, just like people would have when they're driving home, from work, that time to unwind. I take my time to unwind. It might be I go in my room and sit and veg on my phone, or whatever it is. I'm doing something to sort of step down from my day and then rebuild back up into the next shift of work that's going to happen. And I think that's a simple but really big thing that I think helps out. And then finally, I would say, for those people who are social and aren't getting that right now, find ways to initiate social time. I've seen a lot of people doing social happy hours, which I've done a few of those. I've seen people organizing virtual book clubs, virtual workouts. You guys know all that stuff. But I do think at first glance, you can say, oh, that's really not going to give me that same, it's not going to fill me up the same way it would if I was sitting at the bar with my friend. Well, it might not, but you'll be surprised at just how much it'll mean to you, and just how much energy it can give you, even though that person's not there, if you just take the initiative to set it up or drive it or to jump in on one of those. I think I've been pretty shocked at just how much it's helped re-energize me for a few days after. So that's it. That's all I would probably say there.
Those are some really good tips. And I like the second from last one that you said, taking that break after work before doing anything else. Usually I finish work, and then half hour later I have a workout to do, and then right after that I make dinner. So it's hard sometimes to do that, but I really like that. I think a lot of people don't do that because they're already at home, and they're kind of in oh, I'm home, so might as well do this, this, and this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can end up being, even more pressure you put on yourself to do everything all the time because you're there in the house. And it's like, well, wait, you wouldn't be here doing that on a normal day. It's okay if you're not here doing it just because you have the chance to do it now. Take the time, take a breather, go for a walk, then come back and start your personal nighttime.
All right. Well, that is all we have. And I really appreciate you sharing all these great tips, especially during this time. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot out of this. So thanks again. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Like and subscribe.